yes, my presentation is going to be very, very different. I'm going to give you some of my background. It's quite unusual, but, you know, I am a Tulane grad, and I love Tulane because I think that we were so outside the box there. I really do credit them for a lot of my journey in medicine, which has been quite, once again, quite an adventure. So, I call this my third residency. So I had done 2 residencies, occupational medicine, internal medicine. I got my master's in public health when I was at Tulane. And then I got a job in media. I became a full-time reporter at a Fox News station with absolutely no training. Prior to that time, I had been deputy director of the Occupational Medicine program at USF. I was in a lipid clinic. I did a lot of different things, and during my residency, I worked with the ATSDR, which is a CDC division, Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry, so we worked on Superfund sites. So my first exposure to the media was not a good one. I was at a Superfund site. I was talking to physicians. I had to educate them and tell them about the chemicals that were involved at that Superfund site. And obviously, if you know anything about chemicals and toxicology, information is generally very anecdotal and very limited. So I was giving them lectures with what I had, and honestly, I scoured the journals, and I thought that I had done such a wonderful job. But in the course of my talk, I talked about psychosocial aspects of a Superfund site, because these poor people, they lived next to this site, and they saw these people in what they called moon suits, and there they were living next door. So I said psychosocial, and I got quoted in the paper as saying it was psychosomatic, and so I was no longer on that site. The next thing I did was I was on a committee for the state of Florida for arsenic in playgrounds. This was CCA-treated wood. Again, my occupational medicine background, toxicology background, and we looked at a lot of research on this CCA-treated wood. We had a reporter who was saying that it was causing severe injury in children, none of which was substantiated. Nothing was evidence-based. We did a lot of research on that. She harassed me for quite some time to get an interview, and so I interviewed with my colleague. Together, we interviewed together, and we pointed out some of the flaws in her reporting, including ways to mitigate the problem without tearing down all of the playground equipment, which cost millions of dollars, but it never appeared in the paper, and everything was torn down. So how did I get here? I went from not wanting to be in the media to being full-time. I was looking for another job, and the job literally just appeared. It was again a very interesting situation. I was going to be a hospitalist. I was getting ready, and someone talked to somebody, and a job opened up, and they said, "Hey, would you like to be on television?" So I kept thinking about my public health roots, my Tulane roots, my experiences at Charity Hospital, where I was so passionate to try to prevent illness. And I thought, why not? I'll do this for a couple of years. I stayed there for 15 and a half. Okay, so I want to tell you a little bit about what we do and how you can interact. And if you know more about the formats that are utilized, it will help you then to help that reporter, maybe even help you to get on television or get your, your center or your patient, whatever it is that you want to do in front of, viewers. Okay, so the first format you're very familiar with. It's called the package. So the package is like a story, beginning, middle, end. It's usually pre-recorded. It is pre-recorded. And it starts with interviews. So interviews were super easy for me, being a physician. The rest of the stuff, not so much. But usually what you do is you set up the interview. They're going to come to your office. They'll ask to come to your office, or you'll do it on Zoom. And what you really want to do is to try to take that reporter with you into your office, into your practice, into your kitchen. You want it to be as demonstrative as possible. You want to offer them those things. There's something called B-roll. So B-roll, anybody know what B-roll is? Because I didn't. Yeah. So I had no idea what it is. So basically it's because television is visual. If I'm speaking or talking or describing and I don't have direct video, I have to create it. I have to find it. And that is time consuming. And again, as I'll show you a little bit later, time constraints are really, really an impediment in television. So you want to ask, what's the deadline? So it varies. And I can tell you, over the course of my career, sometimes I spent, probably years, doing what's called a day turn. I would get in the morning. They'll tell me what I need to do. I got to get an interview. I got to go interview that person. Then we got to come back. Then I got to put headphones on. I had to transcribe it. I had to pick out what I liked and what I didn't like. I had to write the story, take the story, give it to my producer. Then my producer would look at it. Then my photojournalist would have to edit it, and all that would have to be done in one day. So it's really tough. So the more you can offer, if it is someone that is on a deadline like that, the more that you can offer, the better. Telling the story visually, we love people, patients, individuals that may go through your culinary program. We want to see the befores, we want to see the middle, we want to see the afters, we want to hear their emotion. And you want to talk about, what they've been through, what they've been through before perhaps, not a lot of facts. You really do have to listen to the sound, and you really are looking for that emotional part. A lot of times the reporter can fill in the facts, but what they want from you, they want passion, mostly. Quality, again, may not matter when it comes to pictures, but it's nice. Video can be used from the outside. A lot of times people shoot their own video, and we have amazing cameras now on our cell phones, but whenever you do, and if you want to do something and you think you're going to use it later and offer it to a reporter, turn your phone sideways. It's a 16:9 aspect ratio, and if you go up and down, you're going to see wings on both sides. So I've got a lot of video and examples to show you. This, again, spans, 17 years? So it'll give you at least a little bit of an idea. I don't know. That didn't start right. Let me try that again. Well, basically, this was video that was shared to us by this young girl's mother. Can you get the sound up? Okay. She was Miss Tampa, beautiful young woman who had POTS. She was diagnosed with POTS, which is a postural orthostasis, and so we did a story with her, and you can see we used some of that video. It's not perfect, but I think it just really enhanced the story, and it allowed us to tell her story. Is it going? This is video shot by Morgan's mother, Jennifer, during one of her episodes. When she would pass out and turn blue, and we just hope that, she would come back. Morgan spent 5 weeks in the hospital without answers. Okay, all right, sorry about that. I'm used to an Apple. So the other thing you want to think about is natural sound. So it's what, if you're mic'd up, just remember that mic's probably hot. So that means that they can be recording anything you're saying at any point in time. And we've had that situation before. We had a really weird situation where this one poor doctor had a really family emergency. It was huge. It was in the news, all kinds of stuff going on. And he excused himself for a minute, went in the room to talk to one of his family members, and he forgot that his mic was on. Of course, I would never, I was not, I was there for a medical interview, but you always have to be cognizant that that mic is on. Voiceover and tracking. So that's that portion of the package that you hear. Once again, like I said, that's kind of like the fact portion where it's scripted. Usually it's scripted, and it incredibly concise. So usually they'll give you 2 minutes maybe for a piece, maybe 3 minutes if you're lucky, 4 minutes if you're exceptional. So everything that you tell that reporter, they're going to have to condense down to almost nothing. So just be aware of that. Don't give them too much information. Give them the nuts and bolts. Give them the easier stuff to understand or comprehend, because you're not always going to have a physician reporter, so that they don't have to translate what you're trying to say. And again, we're talking about B-roll. The more of that B-roll you have, the more pictures, the more photographs, the more home video, the more everything. You can offer it up. They may not want it all, but at least it would be available to them. See if I can pause this. So this incorporates a lot of natural sound. Of course, this is my occupational medicine background. I love this piece. It's about firefighters. But you listen, don't look at the content. Listen to the natural sound that we used. Look at the video that was shot, what was used as we were speaking or talking, and listen to the interview. Listen to the passion in this particular person's voice.
In this Mayo Clinic, Jacksonville.
Here we go.
In this Mayo Clinic,
It is. Let's see if I can make this.
On this certified training course at Pinellas Technical College, firefighter EMT Kelly Kale shows us how she swings a sledgehammer and how she moves a mock ceiling tiles using a pole. But because she's wearing special hidden sensors like this on her shoulder, back, and legs, she's also showing us something else: which muscle group she's recruiting while she's performing her task.
We are utilizing EMG and motion analysis, so that's looks at muscle activation and skeletal movement.
University of South Florida exercise and nutrition specialist Charity Lane watches the spikes on her computer screen to identify the exact muscles Kelly's using as she makes her way through the strenuous course.
And you can see there's a lot of muscle activation there.
EMGs track how hard each muscle is working. Using a special software program, the motion sensors also reveal how her skeleton moves and rotates in real time. Information that will be used in a USF-based exercise lab where a personalized program is created to fit the specific size, body type, and needs of the first responder.
What we're trying to do is make sure that they have all those muscles that are required to do every single one of those activities, which they don't think about, they just do, right? Rapid response, strong enough so that they don't injure themselves.
Based on an earlier analysis, Kale's changed her weightlifting routine and says the benefits aren't just physical.
Confidence is a big thing for being a smaller female, and I feel like going through this course and seeing that all my muscles are really capable of doing all of these activities really helps out with my confidence.
She believes the individualized approach will catch on.
I think that doing this and having actual scientific evidence to prove that these exercises are really going to help us do fireground activities, I think that's going to skyrocket it.
But before the program can take off, the researchers will first have to prove it works. And while prior studies primarily focused on strengthening the back, Lane hopes targeting other areas of the body will be even more effective.
There are shoulder injuries, there are ACL injuries. It just depends, you never know what you're going into. So our point is to help strengthen them as much as possible to be as preventive as we can.
An intervention Kale hopes will keep her on the job injury-free. For the Fox Medical Team, I'm Dr. Joette Giovinco.
So if you notice in that particular piece, we had her put the electrodes on and stick them to her arm. I mean, things that you would think are mundane and simple, my photographers loved. They loved being able to show every single aspect of things, and it really makes the piece more interesting because then the viewer sees what's happening. Where are those electrodes going? What are they doing to monitor this particular person? The next thing I have to show you, I do this because it was just really funny. Early in my career, I remember going into a lab, and my photographer at the time, she was asking the lab worker to just do something so I can just, record it. And he just kept looking at her like, what am I supposed to do? And then she kept going, put something inside one of those glass things or something. I don't know. She didn't know how to communicate with him. And I remember I just looked at him and she said, she wants you to pipette an aliquot of that fluid into the beaker. And he goes, oh, okay, I can do that. So if you look at this
in
one,
this Mayo Clinic Jacksonville lab, these researchers are hoping their vaccine will someday turn the tables on cancer as we know it.
So yeah, they love pipettes. The other thing that was kind of crazy for me in the beginning as a microbiologist, my background is microbiology, and I remember they would use B-roll of people streaking blood agar plates when we were talking about virology, and I remember going crazy, going, no, and I had to go to a hospital and actually get virology B-roll so that we didn't do that any longer.
For Blaze, Dr. Bartels will buy...
I'm sorry, I don't know how to pause. This one... Again, another story. This is more surgery. But what we did at this surgery, a lot of times you'll see pieces with surgery and you'll see wide views and close-ups and various things. But what we did was we took it one step further and we let the doctor explain things and show us the actual device. And I think it really added a lot to this piece. So again, the mundane can become very educational. Let's see if I can make this work. This was an amazing story about a little boy that got a cochlear implant. If I can.
For Blaze, Dr. Bartels will bypass a malfunctioning ear using high-tech implant.
This is the device that goes into the inner ear. That's the magnet. This is an antenna, and this is an internal computer.
That internal computer is connected to the cochlea with tiny wires you see here under the microscope.
Each of these little metallic rings is an electrode, and there are 22 of those.
Those electrodes, carefully spaced on the curved wire you see on this X-ray, sense pitch, loudness, and tone. That information will be transmitted through nerves to Blaze's developing brain.
So in that particular case, it was a really great piece because we got to see him here for the first time when they turned on his implants. And then we followed him about 10 years later, and he was in a musical group at his school. He was hearing that well. He was doing so well in school. So, all right, it goes without saying, just try to relax. Some doctors get extremely tense. I think I had an advantage there because I think that I was able to kind of help them to relax. Again, you want that emotion and that human connection. That's more so that you can give people the facts. You can give the reporter the facts. They're going to condense them. But what they want from you a lot of times is that passion. They want to hear how excited you are about what you're doing or how passionate you are about a particular patient that you have treated potentially. The story content ultimately, though, is going to be up to that reporter. So, in essence, when you're handing over that story, you can't tell them, I wanted to say this, this, and that. They're going to have to do it, in the way that they feel, is journalistically appropriate, but you certainly can give them the appropriate information to guide them.
I was called Lucky 7.
While serving in Iraq.
I'm having trouble to put this back up. Let's see. Okay, this one, this is a mix. We used a little bit of outside video. Outside video is hard to use now because a lot of times it's proprietary. It didn't used to be, but it is now. We used this particular person. She was a veteran from the Iraq War. She was getting a service dog. We followed her through that whole process of getting her service dog. And what you'll see is if you have pictures of certain things, if you have video or examples of certain things that's visual, then sometimes you can highlight that when you're either writing or when you're pulling sound. So you'll see in this case, what we had is we had pictures of the vehicle she was in when they hit the IED, and we also had pictures of her. She was a medic. We had pictures of her in the field. So we wrote to that, and that's probably, if you're interacting with a reporter, they'll probably end up doing the same thing. What you give them may be what they go for because that's what they have in hand.
I was called Lucky 7.
While serving in Iraq, Lieutenant Colonel Kathy Champion survived not one, not two, but 7 IED bomb blasts.
When it goes, it's like you're being sucked and then pushed. The front end of our vehicle was gone. The left side was crushed in. The glass was shattered.
6 days a week for 15 months, Kathy met face-to-face with the people in villages near Abolgrad, but getting to them was a risk itself.
It was like a nightmare.
So again, the photographer did a wonderful job of highlighting that vehicle, I thought. Okay, so what Dr. Harlan was talking about earlier, I heard a statistic that about 70% of physicians now work for corporations or companies. Generally speaking, they will potentially have a public relations person, or you have to get permission in order to go on air. So if there is a PR person or if there is a corporation, I can't just reach out and call you. I would have to call your PR person. And so hopefully, and sometimes most of the time, you have very, passionate PR people who really want to get you on air. Other times they're busy. Other times they may not want to so much. And if it's controversial, a lot of times they'll block it. We had a lot of that issue with COVID. But it's important to get to know your PR person. Tell them what you're doing. Get them excited about your projects and your programs. And they will help you by sending out press releases. So we'll get press releases all the time from different PR folks, phone calls, various things, and then we choose which stories we're able to do. But a lot of times your PR person is going to be that person that's going to promote you. And again, the more that they can offer and they can give to that reporter to help them, I think that, the better your chances are. HIPAA, if it is a patient, if it is someone you're taking care of, then you're going to have to get the HIPAA form signed. Your PR person will walk you through that. If you don't have a PR person or you are independent, what we've done before is we've had a doctor that was on hospital staff, and he was able to get those forms from the hospital. So there are ways to get them, but you certainly need to have those, definitely documented and on your chart. Because you never know where the story's going to go.
Hardly ever do I.
Okay, this is a situation where we didn't have B-roll. This was a young girl, 19-year-old, that died of alcohol poisoning. So we had lots of photographs of her, but we were trying to explain why doing shots or how she did those shots, and how it was easier for this tiny little 19-year-old girl to get 10 shots down than it would have been to get 10 beers down. And why it was so important to talk to teens about this. Let's see if I can make this work.
Hardly ever
do
I see a point 4. Point 4 is a very high level that results in respiratory arrest where you stop breathing.
USF toxicologist Dr. Raymond Harbison was not involved in Molly's case, but he says how soon you reach those lethal limits depends on what you drink and how fast you drink it.
Having 10 shots would get you easily to point 4. The shots are 50 to 90% or even greater alcohol. So small volumes of that highly concentrated alcohol can be taken without any significant limitation because of the size of the stomach. Unlike beer, it would be very difficult to reach a point 4.
So he was commenting on someone that he had not seen before, and sometimes you will be, or could be, if you work with media, you may be asked to do the same. I can tell you that prior to my media career, I would have said no. But then when I started working with individuals and I understood how you could do it, if you speak in generalities, if you don't speak directly about that particular patient, if you have some information, you can make a huge impact, and you can speak, I think, very legitimately. But of course, you just have to stay within the lines. So this next one was a piece that we did, this one's probably about 15 years ago. It was a neurologist who was working with us. It was a very sad case, a 37-year-old, I think that's what I've got up here, 37-year-old with frontotemporal dementia. Let's see if I can make that happen. I'm wrong. Sorry about that. This was an exam. This was a little child who was visually impaired. Again, really quick, easy thing you can do is just show a physical exam.
You'll see just how he sees.
Can you see the ball?
Yes. Where is it? Very good. Can you see the ball now?
Is the ball gone?
Yes.
The ball's all gone?
You have to get within 2 feet and wave your hand before he can appreciate vision.
Sorry, I'm trying to figure out what the next slide is. There we go. Then, again, very, very simple. This is just a physical exam. So simple. So easy. Let's see if I can make it play. There we go. Nope.
It just feels like my lungs are just bursting out.
It keeps him up at night. His teachers have complained about it. His friends' mothers want to know why this cough is still with us and nothing's been done about it.
So today, Chris and his mom are looking to pediatric asthma specialist, Dr. David Rosenberg, for answers. Chris's throat, ears, lungs, and x-ray are perfectly normal. So Dr. Rosenberg is recommending another test.
We're able to measure lung function down to 3 years of age in this office, which is very unusual. Not too many laboratories can do that.
So, yeah, it was a pediatric story, so we just made it a little fun. Just using a physical exam. Simple B-roll. Demonstration. I'm sorry, I really do apologize. I can't see my next slides unless I advance. Here we go. Okay. The next thing is something that's being used a lot more now. So that's sound. We call them SOTs, or sound on tape. Of course, there's no tape anymore. It's just calling up a doctor, maybe getting a Zoom interview, getting a quick sound bite from that particular person about a particular topic. There's also that question and answer format. You see that a lot on cable TV, cable news, where they've got an anchor and they're asking questions and you're going back and forth. I did that a lot. I did that in stations across the country live. A lot of times you're not seeing them. You're just hearing them. So you have to respond and you have to usually that's definitely not scripted. Some of those things can be pre-recorded, but a lot of times they're not. But once again, keep it as simple as possible. When you're speaking, you want to answer the question, stop, pause, take a breath, make sure you watch that tone and inflection as you're answering, and be as relaxed as possible.
He suggests patients demand anesthesia.
This was another demonstration. And I know you guys aren't reporters, but you always have to remember you have to always consider both sides of a story. And in this particular case, we used a demonstration once again. Very simple, very easy. Similar to what
he suggests patients demand anesthesiologists use this. It's a brain activity monitor. He says it could have told Carol's doctor she was awake.
And literally, it goes on the forehead just kind of like this. And that allows us to then capture the EEG, the patient's brain waves.
Dr. Scott Kelly works with the makers of the VIS monitor. He says it shows if patients are sedated too little or too much.
Maintaining the brain score between 40 and 60, which is this highlighted zone here on the monitor, leads to a very safe and effective type of anesthesia care.
Many advocates believe this should be an industry standard.
It's not 100% foolproof.
But Dr. Roger Moore disagrees. He's with the American Society of Anesthesiologists. Although Moore uses the VIS monitor in his own practice, he thinks his colleagues should not be forced to do the same, while the society is spending over $1 million studying the monitor's effectiveness.
There is a need for us to make sure that we do not see ourselves supporting an industrial-sponsored machine when we don't have the scientific evidence yet to back it up.
Finally, the real diagnosis.
This was that Pick's disease story, but I think for time's sake I'm going to move forward. Okay, social media. Social media, viral videos. There was a doctor, I don't know if anyone's heard of him, it was Dr. Miami. Ever heard of him? Plastic surgeon. So basically what he was doing is he decided to do his surgeries on Snapchat. So this was a really fun piece that we did. But this was the beginning, I think, of a lot of social media, physicians on social media. Then we had people, I think there's a dermatologist that was popping pimples who now has her own show. There's various people out there, and there's this desire amongst some of these doctors to become viral. I've seen some try to become viral. It wasn't pretty, but this guy was so genuine, and so I think that's why he did so well. I'll give you a little bit of this one too, because this I think was just such an interesting story. He's a celebrity.
Here in this Miami, Florida waiting room, Dr. Michael Salzhauer welcomes more than just plastic surgery patients. He also greets fans.
You guys on spring break? Now that we have this worldwide audience, it's a hoot. I mean, it's more fun than anything I've ever done.
Amid these selfies and souvenirs to hundreds of thousands of social media followers, Dr. Salzhauer is the real,
not the fake,
Dr. Miami.
I'm a plastic surgeon, and I make people feel better about their body.
So we asked the patient before the surgery what music they wanted.
The atmosphere at work is just infectiously fun. You like that one. And obviously business has boomed.
That boom began a little over a year ago. Dr. Salzhauer began posting full frontal surgery photos on Instagram, a move that violated the company's rules. After his entire account was wiped out, his 15-year-old daughter had another idea.
Dad, why don't you try Snapchat? And I thought, isn't that for sexting?
Go back to the operating room.
Turns out Snapchat was the perfect place for his surgical snips.
I made my cut around the areola. The next day we did it again and again. Breast lift with implants and correction of asymmetry. It grew very quickly to 100,000 viewers.
Tonight, time for shout-outs.
And now it's up to
Eric from Oslo, Norway.
More than 800,000 viewers a day.
Snapchat's success has this board-certified surgeon booked out 2 years in advance.
I wanted it that bad. Yes.
Courtney McSwain owns a Ruskin-based cleaning service. She gladly waited a year for her tummy tuck. Getting to know Dr. Miami virtually helped seal the deal.
Most doctors, when you go, all you have is pictures. With him, you could see somebody live laying there on the table and see the procedure that they're getting done.
She remembers signing the Snapchat consent without hesitation.
I was like, yeah, okay. I was so excited about the Snapchat, so excited about the surgery, so I'm telling all my family and friends, to make sure y'all see me on Dr. Miami.
After the operating room, second patient of the day, the mommy makeover complete.
But this Miami doc believes his popularity goes beyond the lure of his media presence. He says these videos demystify how surgeries are performed.
One of the biggest barriers to any kind of surgery is just fear. Fear of the unknown, what the process is like. All right, so I made my pocket under the muscle, or the pectoralis muscle, right? You get to see how people's bodies can transform, and it looks like magic. It's kind of like a magician showing you his tricks.
And while
Yeah, so you could see we had to really, really pixelate those things. Our supervisors made us really cover up a lot of that stuff, obviously. We interviewed him again for a quick soundbite because there was a lot of backlash by the boards with regard to some of these doctors going on social media. So there were some guidelines that were written at the time, and honestly, when we did this little quick Zoom interview with him, he really thought that was a good idea to have them, certainly, but still felt like it was important to continue to do what he was doing.
I think that, first of all, the fact that so many other literally hundreds of surgeons are doing the same thing is quite flattering. Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. Now, if people cross the line or people need guidelines to know what's right and what's wrong, I think that's the role of a professional organization. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
So we talked a little bit about that, taking the breath, watching your tone, your inflection, try to stay calm, speak clearly. If you do accidentally use a medical term that you think most people would not understand, just back up a little and explain it. It just takes a second to really kind of say it in layman's terms. We were told 8th grade education, 5th grade education. It also depends on the time slot where you're at and what people are doing, if they're making dinner, if they're preoccupied, versus just watching, say, late at night. Okay, ethics. This is really, I'm very passionate about this. I think that there should be ethics. I think that doctors have a responsibility. I do believe that we need to present evidence-based medicine. If it isn't evidence-based medicine yet, or if it's in, as you saw before in that occupational medicine piece that I showed you, we said it, I think, 2 or 3 times. This has not been proven yet, and it's still being studied. I think it's important to be truthful. I think reporters will see that. Photoshop, believe it or not, we did have one physician who had some sort of an aesthetics machine. It looked like he had photoshopped the before and afters, and we always really were pretty strict about seeing the patient before, waiting 6-8 weeks and seeing them again, but not everyone does that. The other thing that you shouldn't do is if somebody asks you to do something, don't use an employee as your patient. Don't substitute anybody. It has to be someone real and genuine. At least I think that's the ethical way to move forward. Not everyone does that. Once again, there's opinion versus evidence-based information. This was back in 2014. So basically what's happening is Dr. Oz had his show, and he would talk about certain products. And there would be what they called the bump. So people would go out and buy, they would sell thousands and thousands of pills or whatever it was that perhaps he was talking about that particular day. I think that a lot of Dr. Oz's stuff, though, was probably put together by producers. I'm sure that he had a whole crew. He wasn't working alone or with a photographer like me. So in his defense, I think that perhaps maybe some of that might have played a role in what happened after this. But I don't know if you remember, but that he actually had to go before the Senate. So I have a couple of clips from John Oliver to kind of exemplify
this. And to give Dr. Oz the benefit of overwhelming medical doubt, he seems to be standing by some of his claims.
I actually do personally believe in the items that I talk about in the show. I passionately study them. I recognize that oftentimes they don't have the scientific muster to present as fact.
But that's the whole point. You're presenting it as a doctor.
So you're presenting it as a doctor. I think that that's important. You've got that doctor, that MD, or whatever allied health professional you are. You have that. I think we take an oath. Personally, that's my opinion. Again, my opinion. We take an oath. So you'll see a little bit further. Here's the Senate speaking to Dr. Oz back then.
Name me one case where a man named Oz claimed mystic...
Hang on. I don't know what happened. Let's see.
Name me one case where a man named Oz claimed mystical powers and led people horribly astray. Name me one case. You can't do it. The only problem with the Dr. Oz effect is that magic pills don't technically exist, and Dr. Oz knows that.
Do you believe that there's a miracle pill out there?
There's not a pill that's going to help you long-term lose weight and live the best life without diet and exercise.
Do you believe there's a magic weight loss cure out there?
The word, if you're selling something because it's magical, no.
Yeah. So now, after everything's happened with COVID and some of the other things that have transpired, I'm not so sure that the Senate would do this again, but at least back then that was the standard. Other things you might be willing to talk to your media people about: celebrities, deaths, illnesses. A lot of times they're going to be scrambling for people that have expertise in a particular area. That could be, anything really. A particular illness. I know when Steve Jobs, I know that was a big one. You could just go down the list of all the people and those celebrities that we've had to speak about. Again, convey what you know. You're filling a void. So if you are an ethical physician, then I encourage you to go out there, because if there is a void, if they need someone with expertise to speak, they're going to find somebody. And it's better it be you or someone who has ethical considerations, I think, than someone who perhaps maybe not be as diligent about finding things out. I've seen it before where I've yelled at TV sets before because I've seen reporters trying to fill in a gap and trying to interpret what they've read, perhaps on WebMD, I'm not really sure, and really stumble. And I think that they would be very glad to have somebody there that would help them if they were readily available. Lots of other things you can talk about. Vaccines is an extremely hot topic right now, as you know. I'm going to skip through some of this. This was the early days of the pandemic of COVID-19. I started that coverage in January, and it was probably one of the most difficult and frustrating times of my career. I think I had more off-the-record conversations with people who were unable to speak with me on the record in 6 months than I had in 15 years prior. I used a lot of literature, which, as you can see, China made them retract the study that was done that was talking about how desperate they were in China. So I saw this, I felt like this train was coming toward us, and our country wasn't getting ready. It didn't feel like we were anyway back in January. Zoom. Oh my gosh, does anybody use Zoom? Zoom, I know. Ad nauseum, right? So, yeah, a lot of reporters will allow you to use Zoom. A couple little things you can buy microphones. There are lav mics. You can buy them for very little money, maybe $30 or so. Headphones are sometimes very helpful, depending on where you are. Watch your background, of course. You don't want to be in an uninteresting place. You don't want a blank wall behind you, but at the same time, you don't want a mirror reflecting back. So try to be cognizant of where you're doing your Zoom interview. The other thing is filters. Oh my gosh. Did you guys, I don't know if you saw the lawyer that was the cat. I had a situation where I had a psychologist who was, I don't even know what she was, but she had like stairs behind her and gold coins flowing behind her. She couldn't figure out how to turn it off because her daughter had been on Zoom the day before. So finally we got it off, and thank God that was not live. Lighting, I'll show you in the next slide or two. Camera position, I know this is probably looking at me thinking, why is she talking about camera position? But you want to lift your laptop. So there's nothing, you don't want it facing up because that camera's looking up your nose. You really want to try to make it as even with your face, or maybe even a little bit above if you don't want to show this. So you just prop it up and then make sure that angle is framing you well. Internet service goes without saying. I had to have mine all revamped when I started broadcasting. I had to broadcast from home because of COVID. So this was my living room. As you can see, so something really cheap and easy to get is a ring light. There's lots of LED ring lights that will change in color, give you a softer color and a harsher color. You can see behind that, I have my recipe book rack up there holding an iPad, which is a teleprompter, which is connected to the station. My laptop down below, I had one cell phone, which was I used for my communication. So there's another thing you can buy. It's called an IFB. It's kind of like when you see Secret Service in their ears. You can plug that in and you can dial into the station, and they can speak directly to you. So if you've got, partner, husband, wife, whatever in the house, you can borrow that extra cell phone. It may be helpful to you. And then up top, I don't have it there. You can't see it, but the camera went up top in that other little, the top of that stand. And so it was facing kind of down to this chair. Of course, I moved several rooms, and then it ultimately ended up getting a soft light, too. It's kind of like an umbrella light. And as we get older, those can be really helpful, too. I started doing culinary segments because I was doing the coursework with Dr. Harlan. And so I'm going to show, I didn't have access to this, so my station gave me some pieces to show you, and you can see the evolution of what we did. Time constraints. Remember, I told you time constraints are really important to know before you go in and you start working with somebody. I had incredible time constraints. I was only allowed so much time in the studio. I was only allowed a minute of time on air. And my chefs were wonderful. I brought chefs in, actually Chef Carl's son, Chef Ben came in for me, and we would do these pieces. So if you look at what we did, we had to be incredibly creative to make that go really quickly. Again, think visually, and there is Chef Ben, and keep it simple. Try to keep it simple. So this was a poached salmon recipe. So everything's right there in front of us. This was extremely simple, not very many ingredients.
Today's segment is going to be called Simmer, Don't Sizzle. And with me today, my guest is Chef Ricardo Castro.
Hello.
He is with Silo Street Mexican at the Hall on Franklin, but he's also the former director at the Culinary School for the Art Institute of Tampa. So he's going to teach us a little bit about technique and how we can poach things, because that will give us a lower temperature and decrease those AGEs.
Today we're making a shallow poached salmon. It has some asparagus on the bottom and a poached egg right on top. Couple slices like that. Now we want to make little cutlets.
2 eggs.
We're going to do this poaching. Poaching method, you get enough water. Don't go too high in the water. We're cooking our salmon and our asparagus at the same time.
So just one pot.
It's a one-pot deal. We'll remove the salmon.
You can also add some arugula or some nice greens, because those really will counterbalance some of those AGEs. You're going to get AGEs naturally in that salmon, no matter how you cook it. It's just that if you cook it on high heat, it's going to be a lot higher. So that looks amazing.
Excellent.
So you can see we had very limited time to shoot. We had limited time to edit, and we really tried to make it work, because I really was passionate about doing this. This was another chef that we had.
Thanks, guys. Well, today I am joined by Chef Kevin Bell from the Artisan Restaurant in Gulfport, and also the Lure Group. Yes. What are you going to make for us today?
So today I'm going to do a salmon dish with a black bean and corn cilantro quinoa. I'm going to use some coconut oil.
And then we are going to saute.
Give that a nice sear, and we'll put that down. Our quinoa is ready. All that stock cooked down, and now we're going to add all our key ingredients here. It's really light and puffy.
Next we add cumin, cayenne pepper, a pinch of salt, and chopped cilantro.
And a light pepper as well. We're going to go straight to plating.
Okay.
And then we're going to finish off with a little bit of fresh cilantro.
And there you have a very healthy, hearty plate.
Thanks.
So you can see we did a few tricks. I had a really wonderful photojournalist working with me. He started using transitions. So you can see like those things in between, like the top of the pot, or looking up at the salmon. Again, we were very, very limited time, so we did the best that we could. And these got one more with to show you.
We're back here in the kitchen, and we're going to be making healthier tacos. These are vegetarian tacos. We're going to start by eliminating 2 things we always associate with tacos, and that's the tortilla. The tortillas are at least 50 calories, and that would be baked. And also the queso fresco. This is probably about 80 calories. So we're going to start with a very healthy fat, and that is avocado. So how are you going to make that guacamole?
Avocado. Open it up with a knife. Be careful. You move it up and remove the seed. We have jalapeno. Here we have diced tomatoes, red onions.
And now you're getting to my favorite, which is cilantro. And that cilantro can offset the use of salt.
Put it in a molcajete. That's actually how it's called. And then as opposed to chips, I was thinking the best suggestion would be to utilize some raw veggies, more or less like a crudité. Now we're going to start with tacos. We're replacing the tortilla and the cheese. Butter lettuce, you can use iceberg lettuce, you can use bib lettuce. Now we're actually going to utilize some mushrooms. This is going to be in substitute of like the meat, basically.
And that's got that umami flavor, which means that it satisfies you similar to what a meat would do.
Correct. Now we're going to do some regular onion, which has no caloric intake actually. Corn and black bean salsa, and then basically mix them together. And now we just take a little bit of fresh cilantro, drop it in, and That's it.
Hopefully you'll enjoy these as much as we are. So you can see we kind of progressed as we were trying to make that work. You have any questions?